Pankanen, who is going to talk on the Maple Grove School, where she attended. Right. How many years did you attend?
Well, we moved it, so it was twice. I started out in second grade, then we moved, then I went back when I was probably in fifth grade.
Oh.
I did not graduate from there.
Yeah, but you did graduate.
Oh, I
Just
did.
not from there. Okay, you'll cover all that. So, okay, let's take it away. Here's that. You don't, see, you don't have to get real close. You gotta get this close. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Pankanen, and my parents were Fred and Anna Winger, and we lived on a farm on the corner of what is now Fitch-Rona Road and Nesbitt Road. And so, of course, I attended Maple Grove School in the 1940s. And all of you that attended Maple Grove, raise your hands. I want to see all of you. Oh my goodness. This is fantastic. Thank you. And we're going to call on you guys. So if you've got comments, additions, fond memory, anything, you're going to participate in this also. Probably give some recognition here. Jerry Mauer put together the pictures with the names underneath, and
Len Mauer.
we have to warn all of you. Pardon?
Len Mauer. It's not Jerry, it's Len Mauer.
Len.
Jerry's passed away.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Because we've got pictures starting back with Maple Grove School in 1910, going all the way up through the 50s. And we have to warn you that we probably misspelled some names, and so don't, if you have correct spellings, let us know. So the school was originally built in 1865, and it was known as Bent's School, according to the Verona Press story, August 2000. The month the school district was granted permission to sell the property, and in that story, former students Jerry Mauer and Don Durfer shared memories of the school with Verona Press. They recalled hauling water from a nearby pump, studying by the light from kerosene lamps, and using ears of corn as footballs for the schoolyard games. The original one-room school was built in 1865 and was heated by a wood-burning stove, and classes were conducted for the 1st through 8th grades. This building was torn down in 1958. A second 4-room school owned by Verona Area School District for more than a decade replaced the 1865 school and was expanded in late 1950s as an elementary school until the late 1980s, when Stoner Prairie Elementary School was built in Fitchburg. It later housed a religious school, an alternative school program for Verona Area High School, and finally, a church. The building was located south of County Highway PD, across Maple Grove Drive from Walgreens, what that's today, Cobb Store. It was torn down in August 2012 and now developed into 106 apartment units in 4 buildings on the 3.5-acre parcel of the original Maple Grove school site. It was stated that the property was sold in early 2000s for about $350,000 and later sold to the current owner. So I might point out, when we're talking about the original owners of the property out there, was Ben's, and I began to question Len about it. Was it a Z on the end or TS? and this is where we get confused about spellings, so our spellings might not be all accurate. The Bents was B-E-N-T-S, the correct spelling. So the years from 1945 to 1952, the schoolhouse, and there's pictures dating all the way back to 1910, 1911. The school was called Maple Grove due to the beautiful maple trees that grew around the edge of the school property. Autumn was a glorious, colorful time at our school. All 8 grades were in the same room, and the school had no running water or bathroom facilities. We had to raise our hands to gain permission to go to the outdoor facility, or if the teacher was busy, we wrote our name on the blackboard. Drinking water was delivered by Albertan Share in a milk can and poured into a ceramic fountain with a bubbler on the bottom. We could push the bubbler to get a drink. However, as the water level dropped, so did the pressure, and it became pretty difficult to get a good drink by the end of the day. And it was pretty warm. The water was tepid from the sun shining through the window. Our library was located behind the big stove, and you can see that in the pictures, which provided heat for the school. It was warm and cozy to sit on the floor by the bookcase behind the stove and read the slim supply of library books. The teacher would sometimes get books from the library in Madison, which was such a treat for us avid readers. I think I read all the books by the bookcase by the time I was in 4th or 5th grade. So we eagerly awaited those Madison Library books. Classes were pretty structured, reading and arithmetic in the morning, and lots of cursive writing practice. Afternoon classes were science and spelling, and I recall 3 teachers, Etta D., Miss Narveson, and Mildred Roethlisberger. While the teacher was conducting individual classes in front of the school, sometimes combining classes with only one student to a grade ahead, you graduated immediately. Older children helped younger children with flashcards and read stories to them. Music was wonderful with Fanny Steve, the traveling Dane County music teacher, who visited Maple Grove once every week or probably less. We all adored her. She kept us entertained and encouraged us to sing, dance, bounce huge balls, all to her energetic piano tunes. We also participated in Dane County Elementary School's graduation music productions. I wore makeup. I played a part as a Mexican child and danced the hat dance. I wore makeup to make me look more Mexican and refused to wash my face afterwards. It felt so glamorous. Cast members were from all the schools in Dane County. Our Christmas programs. We had annual Christmas programs, singing songs and performing in plays for our parents. One of the boys refused to memorize lines of the plays, so he was assigned the job of being the official curtain puller. Many times we didn't have enough boys for the male roles, so the girls pitched in and performed those parts, playing numerous roles. Cleaning the schoolroom floor. We loved the chance to clean the schoolroom floor. We would push all the desks and other furniture to one side of the room, and the teacher would sprinkle sweeping compound all over the floor, and we would square dance wildly to a record on the record player. Oh, what fun we had sliding, running, and do-si-doing while polishing the floor. The floor had a lot of give due to a weak wall, and you will see some pictures up here. They had metal reinforcements holding the wall together. So it was quite challenging dancing. In the wintertime, it was warming up time before the stove would kick in and give off heat, as well as having a late start with classes. raking leaves. With all those maple trees surrounding the schools, we had an annual raking day with a wiener and marshmallow roast. We all look forward to no classes and a cookout treat. Visits from Mr. Alexis Bass, once or twice a year with his Irish setter dog, were a special time for us. Mr. Bass would play the piano and sing to us, along with great stories, mostly about his Irish setter. Recess. We all loved recess and raced outside to play such games as hide and seek, pom-pom pull-away, ante over the school building. And I was in second grade, I thought that was Anime Reener's game. We also played Red Rover and tag. We had special game days with baseball and football teams from other country schools. During one of our recess times, we encountered a skunk acting strange. We killed it with sticks and stones, and one of our parents took the skunk to UW to analyze it. It had rabies. In addition to our running games, the schoolyard equipment consisted of swings, loops, and a bar. Every spring, we attended play day at Verona Elementary School. We participated in running races, three-legged races, slipper kicking, sack race, and of course, ending up with a softball game. The athletic competition included all the area elementary schools, with winners receiving 2-inch ribbons as prizes. It was a challenge to see how many you could pin on your shirt with a straight pin. We all have fond memories of WHA radio programs, a few times a week for science, music, and art shows. Best of all were the weekly handout of goiter pills. Tasted like chocolate malt. They were an iodine supplement to our diet. After school, my sister and I would take the shortcut home on foot through Wiesenberg's field, across the ridge, over to our farm. It was great walking into the house after a busy day at school to the aroma of fresh baked bread with lots of butter and honey on it, and a time to listen to a couple of soap operas on the radio. Stella Dallas, Lorenzo Jones, and young Witter Brown before starting milking chores. There is explanations of the photo background that Len wrote up, and I have a copy there. I'll have another one over there. And we'll start with Maple Grove people that want to help participate. Don't be bashful. Should we pass the microphone around? Okay. Over here we got some Maple Grove people. We got Ron.
Somebody's got to start.
Yes, very good.
I'm Ron Lenz. I went to Maple Grove all 8 years. The last year I went there was in the new school, so I think I started in '49. And have some really good memories of that school, and of course the sweeping compound. I remember those days, especially after this winter and as cold as it's been. I had Mrs. Roethlisberger all 8 years. She started the year I was first grade, and the last year she taught there was about the last year I was there in 8th grade. And she got there a little late some mornings, and it was an oil burner at that time, and it was so cold in there, and so we would have to put the desk wall to one side, and just have a run and slide, and anything you could do to keep warm. So I remember that. Another time I was probably 3rd or 4th grade, and the boys were throwing snowballs at the fuel oil tank outside, and she caught us doing that and made us so mad. And the punishment at that time was to write up to 1,000,000 one at a time. And we were working on that all day long and didn't get anywhere near close to it. I did learn that how much 1,000,000 is back in those days, and about like 1 trillion today, I think. And one last thing then, Mrs. Roethlisberger, we had lunch and went out on a nice spring day to play then after lunch, and that was the last year I was there. It was in a new school, so the windows were there. We could see into the school where she was, and she fell asleep at her desk. And so, well, we took advantage of that then, and don't make too much noise, don't wake her up. And it was 2 o'clock or maybe a little bit after before she finally woke up, and couldn't say too much that time, but I remember that, yes. So.
Thank you.
Point out.
I just had a couple things to add. I called my brother, who you went to school with, and he's 9 years younger than me, and I said, what do you remember about Maple Grove School? And he said, square dancing, famous. The hole underneath the school, that, I don't know why that was there. He thought it was there for some plumbing, and I said there was no plumbing in that school. The outhouses, yes. On each corner of the property. And let's see, square dancing, the hole, the bubbler. He remembered that and bringing water to school. So not too much change for you young folk.
We still had the bubbler up until that, it was been 1957, probably, 56, 1956.
Then did you go to the new school with the 4 rooms?
1 year,
Yeah, that's what he said.
Real workout for Mrs. Ralph.
Yeah.
There was a lot of students.
I asked
She had
him,
all 8 grades that she was teaching. And I know, I had to teach a lot of the 1st and 2nd graders.
oh sure, flashcards.
Yeah.
I asked him what he thought about Mrs. Roethlisberger, and he says, oh, she was so old. Well, interestingly enough, my dad went to Verona grade school, and he said Mildred was 1st and 2nd grade teacher when he went to school in Verona. Then she taught my sister and me, then she taught my brother. Wow.
I went to Verona Grade School in 1929. Mildred Roethlisberger was my teacher.
I was going to say the same thing. My mother went to Verona Grade School, and Mildred taught my mother, and then when I went to Maple Grove, she was my teacher. And there's quite a few people in this room, I'm sure, that are 3 generations of family that went to Maple Grove. And there used to be a woodshed there. I remember coming to school one morning, my dad brought me, and there was an outhouse on top of the woodshed. Halloween, it was a Halloween game. Yeah, there's just lots and lots of good memories from there.
I just have a question. Who had Mrs. D then? I just heard stories about how mean Mrs. D was. Did anybody have Mrs. D here?
Mrs. D taught in Henry. I don't remember being terribly mean.
With that woodshed out there though? Didn't she take some of the ways out to the woodshed?
Oh, yeah.
I have no recollection. She was a fairly stern teacher, but I can't say too much. She was my brother-in-law's aunt.
Oh, okay.
So we have to keep things cleaned up here a little bit. I just want to call attention to a couple of photographs that have special meaning for me. And one of them was taken in about 1911 probably. And there are pictures before that anime with your mom and other of my aunts on there. But the 1911 picture, is that where, okay. It's where my dad was in 1st grade. And if you look at the first 3 kids kneeling on the ground there, the one in the middle is Dad. He's the cutest of the batch. Well, I think so. Anyway, that picture has special meaning for me. The other one I might call your attention to is the one taken at WHA Studios, and I think you just pointed to it, Liz.
Puppet show?
No, you started out with it. The one in the lower right-hand side, that one. That one was taken at WHA Studios in about probably 1945. It's when I was in first grade. But LaVon, you probably found yourself in that picture. Anna Mae was there. Kenny Wiesenberg was there. And so it was one of those that I think goes back in terms of my time at the school, goes back to the first year. But I remember that day because it was really a big deal for a bunch of farm kids to go into the University of Wisconsin campus and go to the WHA Studios, okay? This was a big deal because we listened to those programs, and to go to the studio was quite a treat. And you can see Mrs. Steves in the lower right corner of that photograph, just the back of her head. And I think this was a live broadcast from the studios. And I don't remember what we were doing in that photograph. It looks like we were climbing Jacob's ladder or something. But I don't know how that would translate on radio. But it was a big day, a big event for us. And Jeannie Wiesenberg and I were in first grade. Ray, you were, what, third grade then? And Carol Lenz and Shirley Wiesenberg were in your class. But it was a fun event. And those are two pictures that have special meaning for me.
Tell about what year was that?
I think it was 1945, probably.
Yes.
I think Louise Stoix was on there. And
I was in 7th grade.
okay. And Kenny Wiesenberg, was he in your class?
8th grade.
8th grade. So yeah, I think that makes sense then, because I think this was 1945. Okay, anybody else? Ray? Oh, I did.
You didn't.
Tell us your name.
My name is Len Maurer.
And Len Maurer had 8 aunts. Is that right? And Henry was the only boy in that family.
Born Christmas Eve, the last in the family.
Oh my.
It must have been quite a celebration at the Maurer household.
And you had sent me some information on that house, your house that you lived in. The Bents people had that property.
Yeah. Our farm was just south of the Maple Grove School on what is now Maple Grove Road. And Grandpa Maurer bought the farm in 1906. That's when he built the barn. 1906, I think he bought the barn. So that house was there for a considerable time before us. If you go to the intersection of M and 151 and look at the Mads house, those two houses were built at the same time. And the architecture, the bricks on those two houses, it's sort of an Italianate structure, and you can see that in the house on the corner. Those bricks were fired locally off of 9 Mound Road. They were very soft, and if you look at what was the old Matt's house, the one on the corner, you can see a lot of those bricks that are just hollowed out from the weather. Same kind of firing, same kind of material, and a lot of the same deterioration. Yeah, it was a grand old house that we grew up in. It was torn down in 1959. So, yeah. So, I don't know.
Tell about the initials you put on the bricks of the school.
Oh, Yeah, Ron Bruni and I were talking about this a little earlier. One of the things that we did when we were ready to graduate from Maple Grove School was to carve our initials in the back of the school, again in fairly soft brick. I don't know whether you did that or not, Ron. Probably would have been bulldozed the year after you did it. But
I couldn't find any room.
well, you had to be careful. The structure wasn't too strong. But it was a sort of a rite of passage to carve your initials into the bricks in the back of the school. And I was lamenting that it was too bad somebody didn't take a picture of all of those initials before the school got torn down. I don't think anybody did. You know, Marilyn? No. Okay, that's enough.
Anybody else?
I'm kind of a Johnny-come-lately or Jenny-come-lately to the Maple Grove scene, but I went back to school as an adult. My name is Marlene Buchel, and I was hired to teach at Maple Grove in 1972 when I graduated. And I have to tell you, I think I see the guy who hired me, Don Hyde, and I believe there were 3 openings then in the Verona district in 3rd grade. And I had gone back to school with the idea of being a substitute teacher, and then I student taught, and then it was like, oh my God, I want to do this full time. And he offered me the position at Maple Grove. I'm embarrassed to tell you that we moved to Verona in 1963, and in 1972, I did not even know where Maple Grove was. I thought, he doesn't think I'm good enough to teach in town. And I was really feeling sad about that. But I have to tell you that teaching at Maple Grove was, next to my family, the best thing that could ever happen to anybody. It was the most wonderful group of families and kids, and Marilyn Maurer needs to talk because she was everything there. She did lunch, she did playground, she did therapy for teachers after school, and it was just an incredible place to be. Couple of things. That building actually was also, after Maple Grove closed, it was also the kindergarten building for the Stoner Prairie attendance area. Stoner Prairie attendance outgrew its capacity almost immediately, so they put the kindergarten in the Maple Grove building. You can sort of sense how people whose kids went to this new building out in Fitchburg, Stoner Prairie, and now they were going to go to this little building, you know, over on, I'm not even sure it was called Maple Grove Drive then, but that was another eye-opening experience for many people because the families of kindergartners, almost to a person, realized how wonderful it was to be in a building by themselves, and they were sad when they had to leave there. We were devastated when we had to leave there. I can still remember sitting in this little library room when Bill Konzemius came out to tell us that the night before the board had voted to close Valley View and Maple Grove. It was awful. We felt really badly. Where did we want to go? Well, we wanted to go where the kids would go. At first it appeared that that attendance area would go to Verona. It turned out we would be going to Stoner Prairie. The majority of students there went to Stoner Prairie. That was a great experience, but it was nothing like Maple Grove. So it was the best of times for many of us. And now to see the apartment buildings there, and they tore down the trees that we planted. And we used to do an exchange thing with Valley View. One year Valley View kids would come for play day to Maple Grove. The next year we would go out there. We went to town once a month, I think, for library. Eventually they bused us for swimming. So we felt we had the best of both worlds. It was a great time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Make any comments about Maple Grove?
Paul had Mrs. Fassbender.
Sure.
Strictly by coincidence, I'm working part-time at ACE for just a few weeks, and this afternoon a gentleman came in and I recognized his name. It was John Ehle, E-H-L-E. And as I'm doing his stuff, I said, I think 100 years ago or so, I had your kids. And I said, Chad? And he said, yes. And I said, Amber? And he said, yes. And I wish you could have heard his comments. This is a long time ago, but his son went to Maple Grove. His daughter went to Stony Prairie. He just went on and on about maybe what we've lost with bigger buildings and bigger student populations, and what a great time it was. I was like, the coincidence was incredible that he was there today.
Thank you. Well, I think it was a privilege to go to country school, and I feel pretty honored that I had that experience in my lifetime. So thank you. Thank you for all your comments, and thank you for coming.
I'm sure there are more people that can.
Over here, do we have any more?
Yeah, I am sure somebody wants to say something, if not Marilyn. I don't want them to go home without having said that.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Maurer, married to Jerry Maurer. I feel like I went to school at Maple Grove just because my kids did, Jerry did, my father-in-law did, and I worked there with the schools for 32 years, about 20 at Maple Grove, and I feel like Marlene did when Bill came out and said, we are closing, we cried. So that's how much we liked it and had a good time. Still do, very close with the teachers yet. Marlene's a special friend from all these years, and I can remember when she walked down the hall with Pat and the two little kids to look the school over. And that was our start of our Maple Grove days together. It was great. And Diane, when she was in first grade, she won the Maple Grove coloring contest and was on TV. And Donna found her Maple Grove Elementary sweatshirt that Jerry made for me when I was working at Maple Grove. So we have lots of good memories. So anyway, so I guess I'm glad you all came today.
You got a lot of bicycle riding now.
I did. I rode the bike from the farm, or I walked up, or if it was really, really cold, Jerry said I could take the car and drive. But it was too short a drive to warm the car up, so I usually walked or rode the bike. Oh, oh, yeah. Yeah, right. When Marge, Jerry's sister, Marty started first grade, her mom, Selma, my mother-in-law, said she was going to put a red dress on her so she could pick her out on the playground. Well, every little girl there had a red dress on that day, so she didn't know which one was Marge. Anyway, but Jerry had great memories. I wish he was here. He'd talk for an hour if he was here, but he had lots of stories about when he hit his head on the wall once and run home and had his dad take care of it. And he said, then they wrapped my head in a towel and sent me back up to school. So that was it. Went to the doctor that night. So anyway, can't think of anything else. Ray, you got something there?
Oh, Ron talked about the woodshed. I can recall that being a form of discipline. When somebody misbehaved in school and you got assigned to the woodshed for an hour or whatever, depending on how severe your behavior was at the time. So that was which would be very unapproved of in these days, but at that time that was one of we had to sit out there and think, and needless to say, some pupils were out there much more than others. And then I don't know, I was thinking that the school was the focal point of our whole farming community. It was where the social activities took place. It was where people helped one another if they had troubles in their farms around the area. So it was just an excuse to get all the families together, which has long been not being done anymore. It's too bad the farming communities aren't that way. They're all independent now. They don't intermix like they did at that time. You help one another out whenever there was a problem. And also, my own theory, that because the older children in the school help the younger children to start reading and writing and all this, that in the long run, when we got to the high school here in Verona, we were much better prepared in a lot of instances. A lot of them did real well when they got to high school because of the learning process we had at our little rural school. So I always feel that was very valuable on my part, that I participated and was a part of that. And I was trying to think of some other things that possibly. The bonfire was mentioned. That was a big thing every fall. And so the whole experience of attending that little rural school is not, no one can experience that anymore. Now you're in a school with a huge bunch of children. I think at the time I was there, between 43 and 51, I think we had a maximum of 17 children in the whole school, from first grade to 8th grade. And that schoolhouse, when we entered it as a little first grader, it seemed like a massive building. It seemed like a huge auditorium. And I think the school, I'm guessing at the dimensions, but it possibly wasn't much over 20 feet wide, but maybe 35 feet long, the entire school. And then there was a little extension on the front of it where you put your winter clothes and your boots in the winter time. But the school wasn't very big, if you think about it. But to us, that was a huge building at the time. And so anyway, that was some of my memories.
How did kids get to school? Did they walk?
Thank you, Ray. There's something I do remember about you, and I mentioned it to Leonard because I was so horrified when you got struck by one of the swings, smacked your head open, yeah. Yeah. Well, Len said that you bled a lot, but he didn't think there was permanent damage.
One other thing here is that keep in mind there was no telephone
That's right.
at these little rural schools. And so when something like this happened, I think we got you home.
Yeah.
You probably got bandaged up and were brought back. But there wasn't any quick communication if something went wrong, because there wasn't a telephone.
Do you remember Sharon Nesbitt with 30-some stitches in her leg? In the woodshed, we were playing a game in there, and she climbed up and lost her balance. I think teacher, Mrs. Rathlisberger, had to put us in charge and take her to the dock in Verona.
Well, I think the emergency calls was to run up the road to Walter Durker's farm.
Yeah.
And hope somebody was there so we could use the telephone.
Yeah. Anybody else?
One of the things I remembered was every year, the Mothers Club, we had a summer picnic, and it was always at Reeder's, up at the cottage on Lake Wisconsin. And we looked forward to that. It was like, this was the big day. And I think it was probably the only day that most of the kids on these farms got to go swimming. It was just a treat, that it was like a big day that, you know, you hoped it was a hot sunny day and everybody got to go swimming. And we probably got there after church at about 1 o'clock, and we had to be home to do chores at 4, but it was a really good 3 hours, so.
Thank you again. Any questions from anybody? Well, as Levon Bruni said, "Ah, the good old golden years of school."
We want to thank Liz for that great presentation on Maple Grove School. We got some more here? Oh, okay.
No, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, we were just like everybody who went to the school to stand up to introduce themselves and when they went.
Good idea.
And
Okay.
what-
Okay, if you went to Maple Grove School or were connected in any way, stand up and introduce yourself and we'll pass the mic around.
I guess I get to start. My name is Linda Ramish Bear. I was the third generation. My grandpa Carl went, and my father Charles went as well.
I'm Sherry Schmidt, and I was third generation also. We were with on the Ramish farm. And this is my mother Esther, and she went to there too.
Yes, our family was 3 generations. My dad went to school, my children, and I had, the girls were in, the oldest girl was in the old building yet, and then the others were in the other, I had only 6th grade. And at one year I had 4 children in 4 different schools.
Yeah, and just
One in Camp Badger, one in Maple Grove, one in the junior high, and one in high school. That's right shortly after they merged with Verona. And I can also remember Mildred Berry was a teacher for 1 year. And Edna Boomer from down in Auburn was a teacher for 1 year. And I went to school. And I started out with editing. And when I graduated, it was with Gus.
okay.
But it was always a lot of memories because we lived so close.
I'm Garnet Harrington Richardson, and I probably started school there in 1951, maybe. And my grandma Lena Harrington went there, and my father Sheldon Harrington, and I was the 3rd generation.
Yeah.
And I'm Ronald Linz, and I went there all 8 years, and like I said earlier, 1 year in the new school then, and we lived on the farm on PD, just west of the Ramish farm there, so I didn't have too far to go across the field, but had to walk or ride the bike, and like I would tell my kids, it was uphill both ways.
John Jordan graduated in '61 from Maple Grove, and Mrs. Featherston was my teacher, so I always tease Rick about that whenever I see him.
We used to go down to the store.
I'm Anna Mae Harrington, an aunt of Garnet's, and I went to school in the 40s. I started in the 40s and went 8th grades, and I was the only one in 8th grade, and I had to go to Madison to graduate for 8th grade. Esther Ramish's, or Schmidt, sister Pat went most of the years.
I think she went only, I don't know what year she.
But in 8th grade, I was the only one, so I had to go by myself to, and so, but Liz remembers more things than I do from way back then. Her dad, in 8th grade, then her dad picked me up and took the two, Edda and Betty, and then at night I had to walk home with them. They walked from down Nesper Road from the Harrington farm down to the Miller farm by themselves. So I guess they must have made it. They were graduated and everything. So, but it was fun years. So, anybody else?
I'm Millie Whiting. We moved to Verona in 1952 from Cottage Grove, Vilas Road, and the Historical Society in Cottage Grove is presently compiling historical information on Vilas Road and Vilas School. And all these things that I heard here today apply to Vilas also. It seems like all the country schools have sort of the same antics and so on. So I appreciate, I even wrote some notes, a couple of things triggered something again, so I appreciated hearing all these comments.
Thank you, Millie. Levon.
I'm Levon Cher Rooney, and I went to school there in the 40s, about the same time Anna Mae went. And I had two sisters that went there to school. My mother went there to school, and her two sisters also. So I think everything's been covered pretty well here. It was a fun time.
My name is Philip Greenwell, and I went to school there in the 40s and 50s in there someplace. And brother Daryl, he went along there too. And like everybody says, I either walked to school, rode a bicycle. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, I was already driving a car. So I take the car to school. I think Roddy probably did. Yeah. Yeah, I drive the car to school, parked beside the teacher's car. And some of the kids would ride home with me at night. Linz is what I know.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have you.
Hi, I'm Donna Mauer. I was just in the new school, I believe 1960 and through 6th grade. So it was a fun time.
Len Bauer, went to school from 1945. Did 8 years there as well, Ron. It was a fun time, I guess.
I'm Ray Mauer, Len's brother. My sister Marty went to school there, and my brother Jerry too. So, and that was between 1943 and 51.
My name is Don Hyde. I was hired as a principal of the elementary schools here in Verona from 1969, and I left in 1983. And the jobs that I had to do, among other things, were to hire the best teachers I could find, and you talked to one of them today. And I regarded Maple Grove School as being my rest and recreation, because once every 2 weeks, I felt a responsibility to go out to Maple Grove and help solve the problems that they never had. But the other thing was that I could go out there and eat lunch and not be surrounded by such a large group of kids. And I'd tell Shirley Riley before I was going out to send out an extra pan of brownies and a few more servings of hot dish so Marilyn Mauer could serve them and I could have a great lunch.
I'm Diane Mauer, and I did go to the original one-room school for the first year, and I think it was in the fall semester that we moved into the two-room school after that. And if I'm thinking correctly, probably the biggest thing that's changed from the way people move around in school districts now is I think everybody that was in my 8th grade class that graduated from Maple Grove, we also all graduated from Verona High School. So that was quite I think there were 12 of us. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance.
The thing that amazes me on this the school thing we've been doing is all of us had, I attended a one-room school too, and we always thought it was so unique. But we had Fanny Steve, we had Alexis Voss, we had Professor Gordon on the radio, we got on a good day, we got to tour the public radio station. We all did exactly the same thing, but we were miles apart, you know. But every spring we would get together and do the play day thing and get to know that there were actually other people in the world. You know, it was really neat. We all had goiter pills. We all had sawdust with the sweeping compound and the duties that we had to do each day. And everybody was pretty much set up the same way, though. Even though we were apart, we were more like each other than we cared to think of. You know, and it's really surprising that it only took me 70 years to figure this out. I still think somebody's got some extra goiter pills stuck in their pocket. So, somebody always got extras and somebody hated them, but I guess we all made it through without having any goiters, so it worked out pretty good. And those things just amaze me. But we want to thank Liz Pinkham for putting this together, give her a good hand for taking the time out.